Fast forward, yeni komo ewo channel so AGH Politics Avenue. Podcast also training because making headlines. And the Jemre na yidi bi exomo ewo ha. Ani di no yaho brax mo se ene yidi kanya. Aya na subscribe to the channel. Ama hit notification bell so share. Na afia foforo so ensa intim enkebi. Ani di no yaho brax mo yanko eye political highways nim. Na onua eje dem a enya asem koto akra. Ni nyina ne se ene dua yi ena me no kasai. Eye enimdifo a omnim de. Efa eye Z9 helicopter crash no no ene o matrase a omudimo inchichirimu ede edum Ghana for na this point in time yen semre yemo nwro asoye abra omu dan nedi ade potia ede akwanhia no ebaye AGH Politics Avenue.
The software and the hardware capable of decoding and giving us the data from the flight data recorder, so we had to go to them. We also decided, as is normal with investigations, to look at the human factors and operational information. We looked at the medical and psychological records of the flight crew. Interviews were conducted with pilots, engineers, superiors to assess the crew's proficiency, training history, and operational culture. We also actually interviewed their families and so on. We left no stone unturned. We also interpreted the weather. We looked at the weather on the day. And we looked at the META, which is the actual weather at the aerodromes. We looked at the TAFs, which are the terminal aerodrome forecasts, eyewitness observations, and then we also took data from the Ghana Meteorological Agency. Next, the investigation team decided to look at the whole organizational and systemic processes under which the aircraft was operated. So we examined the Ghana Air Force policies, their flying orders, and their operational oversight mechanisms. We looked at crew authorizations. We looked at the air tasking order procedures. Because, for instance, for the particular day, the task order that had been given was to fly the Minister of Defense and his party from Accra to Obuasi and back. We looked at Air Force oversight, its safety culture, and the adequacy of risk management systems. Having gotten all this factual information, we then moved to analysis and reconstruction. Using data from the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, radar tracks, and eyewitness accounts, the flight path was reconstructed. We also looked at various analysis of several data and other similar accidents. And then we pieced together the sequence of events leading to the accident. From that, we came up with our findings and causes, and then finally, the safety recommendations. So, for the scope of flight, we looked at the history of the flight, we looked at the weather, we looked at the environment, we looked at the machine, that's the helicopter, we looked at human factors, the crew flying the plane. Then we looked at the organizational and systemic factors, sequence of events, and then we came to what we believed strongly was the cause of the accident. For the history of flight, we went before the flight to see what the pilots had been doing. And it's on record that their last 3 flights before the subject flight, the same crew had flown all the 3 flights before on the same helicopter. On the 2nd of August, they came from their base in Takoradi to Accra. It was a Medivac flight, 1 hour long. On the 3rd of August, the following day, they did a flight from Accra to Cape Coast, back to Accra. 1 hour, 20 minutes. It was also a medical evacuation flight, Medivac. On the 4th, they were tasked to go fly Accra to Salman, back to Accra. That was a 2 hour 30 flight. That was a bullion flight, a cargo flight. On the 5th of August, they rested. Now, it helps to say here that in Ghana Air Force, there are flying limitations for the crew. You have 10 hours per week maximum, 62 hours maximum per month. Before flight, it's also accepted that if you've had a rest of 8 hours, you've had enough rest and you can go to work. They had in excess of 24 hours rest. On Wednesday, 6th August, the crew for the Z9 aircraft, call sign, ISCAP, Hotel Romeo, India, planned to execute the task order for the Ministry of Defense. The flight was scheduled to depart at 8 a.m. with an estimated en route time of 50 minutes. The captain delayed the flight due to adverse weather in Accra, Kumasi, and Obuasi. The weather improved about an hour later. So, takeoff ended up at 12 minutes, 14 seconds after 9 a.m. Throughout the flight, the altitude changed to avoid low clouds. Now let me explain why this was so. The flight started out being conducted under visual flight rules. Now, if you're flying under visual flight rules, what it means is you're using visual references to navigate. It's a normal way of flying. So they were using visual cues to navigate to go to Obuasi. And so they had to stay away from cloud in contact with the ground. So as the cloud base changed, they changed their altitude. Where they needed to avoid, they would avoid. I'd like you to take a look at these 2 pictures. Now, first of all, these pictures were taken in the environs of where the accident took place. Take note, it wasn't taken on the day of the accident, but it's just representative. The picture on the left shows the morning weather and shows you the visibility, gives you some idea of the visibility on the day. The picture on the right is taken from the same place, looking at the same area, and you can clearly see that you can make out the ridges in the terrain over there. And it's noteworthy that on the day of the flight, this visibility you are seeing that I'm telling you, you can't even see that as you can see. On the day, the visibility was much worse. From eyewitness accounts, the visibility was down to close to 200 meters at some point. This also shows a picture of actual weather from a passenger who was on board the aircraft, just to give you an idea. The weather in the southern Ghana was poor on the day, which delayed departure for about an hour. In Accra, conditions were misty, with visibility of about 5 to 7 kilometers and very low clouds starting at only 700 to 1,100 feet above the ground. While the situation improved slightly later in the morning, the early hours were dominated by haze and overcast skies. In Kumasi, the weather was worse, with drizzle reducing visibility to around 4 kilometers and heavy low clouds sitting just 600 to 900 feet above the ground. Only Accra and Kumasi Aerodrome were available. Only Accra and Kumasi Aerodrome weather were available. There was no formal information on the weather available to the pilots along the flight route. Witnesses reported poor visibility due to fog and rain at Bawumia and its environs. Environmental conditions in the Dampier Forest Reserve and its rugged terrain of hills, mountains, created conditions such that over such rugged terrain, you can have turbulence, downdraft, and other phenomena. Now, to look at this is what we're talking about. This is a known aviation phenomena when you have such rugged territory. And what ends up happening is turbulent wind currents occur usually around ridgelines, mountains, and hills, and can generate sink rates in excess of 1,000 feet a minute in moderate wind conditions. These sink conditions can often exist well above the barrier that induces the eddies. We assessed the aircraft to see if it was fit for purpose. The helicopter entered the Ghana Air Force Service in May 2015, having been manufactured in 2012. And it reached its 10-year service threshold on 18th May 2025. Aircrafts have periodic checks to make sure that they're fit for service. The Air Force has 25-hour checks, 50-hour checks, and 100-hour checks. The 10-year check for the helicopter is what was mandated for this helicopter. Now, as is usual, an operator, in this case Ghana Air Force, requested from the manufacturer an extension. And it's normal, happens in civil flying, happens with any type of flying. The manufacturer gave a 90-day extension to 18th August 2025. And basically, the helicopter met all the basic safety requirements. That notwithstanding, it sort of met a 100-hour check. So the Air Force also did a 100-hour check on the helicopter before the flight. The aircraft on the day was declared serviceable and duly signed off by both the engineers and the captain. The flight data report indicates that the helicopter was in good working condition. The helicopter, however, did not have some avionic safety enhancements. As I said before, the aircraft was serviceable and airworthy. The additional safety equipment that the helicopter did not have were things like the helicopter terrain awareness system or the enhanced ground proximity warning system, as you may choose, advanced navigation with terrain mapping, an automatic flight control system. And I would say that these safety equipment would have enhanced situational awareness. For instance, it didn't have an autopilot. That's advanced, the automatic flight control system, so that the crew had to manually fly the plane. So it sort of increases workload. Typically, you want to have a plane that has an autopilot. All the civil planes use autopilots, and the workload on the pilots is very low. It gives you the chance to do things and to think easily, and so on and so forth. Despite all this, the aircraft was in a good condition to fly and met all safety requirements. The investigation has recommended strongly for aircraft with these additional safety enhancements to be acquired immediately for the Air Force. To rule out any potential human causes, we also examined the qualifications, experience, and competence of the crew. The captain has a postgraduate certificate in safety and accident investigation from Cranfield University, UK, in 2024. The captain was a qualified FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, commercial and instrument-rated pilot from Bristol Academy, Florida, USA, in April 2015, 10 years ago. Within the Ghana Air Force, he was recategorized in March 2025 as a Cat C pilot. That is, a pilot qualified to be a captain on the helicopter, the Z9 helicopter. And he had a green instrument rating. In the Air Force, they have gradings for pilots, categories for pilots from A to D. D being, depends on what you call high and low, D being for the initial, sort of, and then you go all the way to A. It's interesting to note that for quite a while, and as of now in the Air Force, the highest category is Cat C. So the pilot was totally competent to be flying this plane. The co-pilot was also a qualified FAA commercial and instrument-rated pilot from Bristol Academy, Florida, and he qualified in April 2023. In December 2024, he was recategorized within the Ghana Air Force as a Category D pilot on helicopter type with a white instrument rating. To further rule out any potential human causes, we examined the medical and psychological records of the crew. A review of the medical and personal records revealed no known medical or psychological conditions in the captain, co-pilot, or technician at the time of flight. All three were described by witnesses as calm, prepared, and professional during the pre-flight activities. Fatigue or medication was not considered to have materially affected their performance on the day of flight. Now to the sequence of events. The flight departed Accra under visual flight rules in marginal weather. The flight to Bawumia was uneventful. Bawumia is approximately 90 miles from Accra, about 10 miles from Obuasi. As the flight approached Obuasi, visibility deteriorated rapidly due to mist and low clouds. At 9:56, the crew entered IMC, which is Instrument Meteorological Conditions. To the layman, it is they flew into clouds because they no longer could stay away from the clouds. So
we nsɛm ahorow timi kɔtɔ ɔkyɛn no so mamna ɔsɛ ɔgye mmerɛ wɔ ha da sɛ ne sɛ ɔba ade ndi adum bi adum yɛnia yɛbɛsan ahyia mu